Hey everybody, this is Al, and today I'm bringing you a full commercial sharpening stop for one of my regular commercial clients. And this whole stop took about 45 minutes, and I've sped it up about 2 times speed. This way, it's not going to drag on too long, and I think that you can still see everything that's going on. You can see all the important things. And I'm going to talk over the whole thing and kind of describe what I'm doing, the thought process, and the workflow and all that stuff. So this is actually a Hilton hotel. It's a high-rise building in the middle of downtown West Palm Beach, and they have 2 kitchens. They have one on the bottom floor and one on the top floor. So once I've got all their knives in the van with me, I turn on all the lights, move the equipment into the positions I want, put on all my protective gear. I crack open the back door of the van so that I can let the hot air from the shop vac go to the outside instead of heating up the inside of the van. And first knife here is a serrated bread knife. So first thing I'm doing is sharpening the straight part at the tip and also at the heel of the knife. Then I'm going to do a very low angle pass, almost like a thinning grind on the flat side of the knife, just to straighten everything out. This is a knife that gets sharpened very often, so this is how I keep it performing its best all the time. And then I'm just going to put it to the side because I'm going to do the actual grinding of the serrations later after I'm done with all the straight-edged knives. I think there was about 15 regular straight-edged knives on this stop, and so I'm going to be going through them very routine. I'm going to do the first step on all of them, which will be profiling and apexing them using the 120 grit ceramic belt on the 1x30 there. Some of you may be familiar with the method that I use. This is the method that I use for 99% of things now, is the kind of top-down edge trailing method on that low speed 1x30. And you might have seen on this knife, I did, I think, one pass at an extremely high angle, and that was because this knife had a couple of pretty significant chips in the edge. So when I'm kind of going through the routine there, that's a really quick way to just knock the edge down a little. If you see the damage, you know it needs to be removed. You don't want to waste too much time just continually sharpening it at the final edge angle. That's also not a good idea because you're going to build up unnecessary heat in the blade. So I find that's one good way of going about that is to just do 1 or 2 passes at an extremely high angle and just kind of blast away that damage as quickly as possible. And then you have a clean slate to work with, establishing your final edge angle. This belt that I'm using here is about halfway worn out, and you can see me cleaning it off there with the belt cleaner, just making sure to extend its life as long as possible. That does, of course, have a huge impact on efficiency. If I was using a fresh belt, it'd probably be going about twice as fast right now. But, I go through a lot of belts, and you got to make them last as long as possible before changing to a new one. My normal routine is to put all the knives on the left side of this 1x30 machine, and as I'm working through them, move them over to the right side. Then when I get to the second step, I'm going to change to a 600 grit Trizac belt for the refinement step. And then I'll just be taking the knives from the right hand pile and moving them over to the left side as I go. At that point, they will be right next to my deburring station and ready for finishing. With each knife, I'm looking very carefully to make sure I establish a burr, a very consistent burr all the way from heel to tip. I'm using the light on top of my machine to see that burr very clearly, and that's what gives me the confidence that I have completed this first step on each of the knives. It's something you get very used to, and you become very accustomed to how it looks when the knife is finished with the apexing profiling step. There's a few different characteristics of the burr that you start to recognize. When there's a little chip, it's pretty easy to tell. There's a little gap in the burr, and there may be a little spot where the light is not reflecting back at you like it should. You may see occasionally I'm using a spray bottle there to clean off some of the knives. Some places give me clean knives to work with, and some places they're very dirty. And so I always have a spray bottle with water and a little bit of dish soap in it. If there is any water left on the knife and you're looking for the burr like I do right here, that little water drop on the edge will make it look like it has failed to produce a burr in that spot, because the light just won't reflect back at you like it does when it's dry. So just watch out for that as well if you're using water while you're working. So this is a very mixed bag of knives, and the angle that I'm using for them is going to vary quite a bit. But I've also been sharpening these knives for over a year now, every couple weeks. So I have a pretty good feel for the angle that's gonna work for this particular client. You want it to be a balance of a low enough angle that it's gonna feel very sharp and be slicey, but a high enough angle that it's gonna be durable enough to last until their next service. So it looks like I'm finishing up the last knife on step 1 here, and I'm gonna check for the burr, use the light, and I'm satisfied with that. Now I'm gonna switch out the belt for the 600 grit, and we're gonna get to work on refining the edges of these knives. Now this step should be a little bit quicker than the first step. For my process, I like to just do one pass on each side if I can get away with it. But if it looks like it needs a little more polishing, then I'll give it 1 or 2 additional passes. You do have to be very careful with these finer belts because they can work up heat very quickly. So I always make sure that I'm moving across the belt quickly, and that I'm never letting one part of the edge linger on the belt for too long. This is especially important towards the tip of the knife, and there's a few things I actually wanted to mention that happen when you're using this method and you get towards the tip of the knife. First of all, you should really be using no pressure at all and just holding it against that belt as light as possible. Then when it comes to the actual movement involved, what happens when you approach the tip, and you can see me doing it here, so the handle gets pulled towards you a little and the tip gets moved down just ever so slightly while maintaining that extremely light pressure. I find that helps achieve a really ideal edge profile. On certain types of knives, you'll see me adjusting my grip a little bit. This is kind of a small fillet style knife, and you can see I was using my thumb to hold towards the tip because I didn't feel like I could get the thumb and the index finger safely holding it at the tip there. Didn't want to get my fingers too close to the belt. When I'm going through this second step, I'm trying to just perfectly match the angle that I established on the first step. I really try to just follow my intuition as to what angle each knife should have. This way I don't have to really think about it too much, and I don't have to, look at the knife again and try to judge exactly what the angle is. I just pick up each knife and make a determination right then and there of how much angle I want to give it. Now we are done with the second step for all of those straight edged knives, and going straight on to cutting serrations. I think there was 2 serrated knives in this batch. Right here I'm using the 1-inch convex diamond serration wheel from Curry Custom Cutlery, and it's mounted on a buck tool low speed 6-inch bench grinder that has the motor part flipped around, so it's edge trailing. It's moving up and away from me. That knife was done already, and then this one is going to be using the 1/2-inch wheel. I keep 3 wheels handy on the bench at all times. So though you have the 1-inch and the 1/2-inch, which are the most commonly used on that machine there. And then I have a custom built machine that you can see in the bottom right, which has the 1/4-inch wheel mounted on it. And that also comes in handy quite often as well. So we made quick work of those, and you can see why, I don't mind doing those serrated knives properly like that. And for commercial clients, I actually don't charge extra for them. It's kind of part of my package deal with commercial clients to just take pretty much everything they've got at a flat rate, which is discounted depending on the frequency of the service. I do charge them a little more for odds and ends like mandolin blades and pizza cutters, etc. So now I'm on to deburring all the knives. I have my workflow set up so that this is always the last step for everything. So in this case, I have straight edge knives and serrated knives. I want to have them all ready for deburring in one big pile, and then I can kind of spend, the last part of this stop just sitting comfortably at this deburring machine and just going through all the knives like that. So this is an 8-inch bench grinder, which also has the motor flipped around, so it's edge trailing, moving up and away. On the left side is a nylon fiber wheel, which is essentially like a Scotch-Brite wheel. And on the right side is a leather wheel, which I use with white compound. So for most of these knives, I am actually using both of the wheels. I am doing one back and forth pass on each side on the nylon wheel first. And what this does is it weakens the burr significantly. And it also does a little bit of blending, which can be kind of nice. I feel that it kind of it blends in that the whatever scratch pattern is remaining on the edge, and kind of smooths it out and primes it for the polishing that it's going to get on the leather wheel. I find that the edges just come out looking really beautiful this way. And it also just helps, as I said, it weakens the burr, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on the leather wheel after that. So you can see we're moving through them pretty quickly, back and forth on the nylon wheel, compound on the leather wheel, back and forth, and then once on each side, and that should be about it. Yeah, just checking with the light, making sure I don't see any burr there. At this point, I'm comfortable taking off my respirator because I'm not producing any more metal dust at this point, and the dust from all the grinding that I've done has settled, and so I can kind of make myself a little more comfortable. This is definitely my favorite part of the process because it's just kind of relaxing and very satisfying seeing the finished result at the end. I don't typically do a lot of testing these days while I'm working in situations like this because it's just unnecessary. At this point, after tens of thousands of knives, you can just see so clearly whether the work is done or not. When I'm sharpening in front of customers, I'll always pull out a piece of paper and slice it up. That kind of gives that wow factor, and it's always satisfying. But in situations like this, I actually was under some time pressure here. I had a couple of other stops to get to that morning, so I wanted to make sure to move as quickly and efficiently as possible, which is also a good thing for commercial customers because they don't want to be without these knives for too long. Notice the position of the overhead light there on top of the leather wheel. That's positioned very specifically to allow me to have a good visual on the burr as it's being removed. I think this is the last straight-edged knife that we're finishing up here, and then it looks like I have those two serrated knives to take care of. So on that bread knife, I did a pass on the nylon wheel on the flat side to move the burr over to the other side. Now I'm doing alternating passes. You can see this method for the serrated knives in a lot of detail in another video on my channel. Now we moved over to the leather wheel, using the corner to get inside of all those scallops in between all the teeth. Back and forth a few times. And this one I am going to test on a piece of paper just to make sure it's moving through it like I'd like it to and looks good. On to the last knife here. This is a knife with smaller serrations, so it can be a little bit more tricky to get in between the teeth, get to all that burr. So you might see me spending a little more time using the corner of that leather wheel. Back and forth a few times, and I can see from my point of view there, I can see the burr that's in between the teeth. I can see it very clearly. I can see exactly when it's all removed. Now everything's done, and I'm going to just get stuff cleaned up here. I'm going to wipe down my bin, make sure there's no dust lingering in it. And I'm using a microfiber cloth and a little bit of alcohol there to make sure I don't have any gunk left in those serrations. And mostly what I use the microfiber cloth for is actually to just remove fingerprints. The way that I deburr on this leather wheel, it's an old leather wheel that's built up a lot of compound, and it really doesn't leave any residue. So I'm really just trying to make sure there's no fingerprints and not too much grime or grease or anything on there, and just wipe off the edge, and these knives will be good to go. All of my commercial clients I bill at the end of each month, and I just have a spreadsheet with each location and how many knives I did on each visit. And so like I said before, I bill a flat rate for each knife, and the discount varies depending on the frequency of my visits. I have 4 different price tiers depending on the frequency. So if it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, I have different prices for each of those. And obviously the 1 week clients get the best deal. Just about done here. I'm gonna get all these knives back in the bin and take them back into the kitchens where they belong. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, just leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.